given the time frame when this tragedy took place, as we usually do, we gave the family a time to respond and grieve the loss of their little boy. You know how when you take little kids to the zoo and you have the glass enclosures, and the little kid goes up and puts their hands on the enclosure and puts their nose up against the glass? There's probable evidence right now would indicate was probably when the mother lifted the child immediately moved forward as if there was plexiglass or something there. You're aware that the child has problems with his vision, and the mother lost control of the child, and the child went in. Not only are we reviewing this matter to determine whether or not any crimes have been committed, we're also reviewing it in the context of our response, the interaction between zoo security and the Pittsburgh police. There were some things that were done very well. There were some things that create some issues in my mind in that regard. Give you an example. When the Pittsburgh police arrived at the zoo, and the 911 tapes will substantiate this, they had trouble, and when these types of things happen, you're talking about responses that are, and you got to get in there, and you're talking seconds count. So it took longer than it should to access the facility. And if you guys have been out, I know you've been out there, you're not going to access the facility from the parking area. You're going to go up as you go to the top, towards Highland Park, and you're going to try to access it as close to the exhibit as you can. Access to the exhibit itself. I'm interested in the keying system. You know how you, in certain circumstances, you have lock boxes where there are keys so you can access a building quickly if you are emergency responding or you are police response. I'm not sure that these exhibits are all keyed the same way. There was a lull in the period of time that the officers could access the exhibit. On the upside of this, when emergency response could access the exhibit, even though the exhibit had not been cleared, you've got zoo employees, you've got a fireman, EMT response, and you've got a Pittsburgh police officer going into this exhibit, into this enclosure, and you don't know where those animals are exactly. That says a lot about us as a community. It may not be the best way to approach this, but it was heroic. And so issues like the use of technologies, cameras, and that type of thing in the enclosures, giving these guys better, putting eyes into these situations before they get in there. That's something that we're going to have to sit down and talk about at length. There was some good things. I mean, there were the response by some of the people that were there. People tried to jump over the rail. They were held back by other persons who were on the observation deck. There was not. The child died within seconds. There was nothing really that could be done if somebody did jump in the enclosure immediately. So,
what happened?
As I understand the evidence right now, the mom picks up the child, has the child by the waist. In almost one motion, as the child is elevated, the child moves forward with both hands and with his face. Mom loses control of him. He goes down on the netting, he bounces twice and goes over. And apparently this is an area where the dogs are fed. So their response was immediate. The netting is problematic for me too, in the sense that that could give somebody a false sense of security that if the worst thing happens, that something like this happens, that net is going to save that child. That net is not intended to do that. As I understand it, there are people that throw substances, food into exhibits to get the dogs, in this case, to move around, move closer to where better observation areas are. So that's an issue too.
You said people tried to go over the railing. Was Mom one of them?
I believe so.
Your understanding is the child was on that railing a very short period of time?
Yeah, and but you guys know the railing is tilted back into the exhibit. So obviously there's consideration given, when you build this thing out, there's consideration given that something, objects, I'm not sure about human beings, but objects certainly are going to be placed on that exhibit, and if you do, they're not going to fall forward into the, into where the animals are.
How far did they get?
Somebody got as far as, actually the top rail was pulled off. Somebody had a hold of it, and as they were pulled back from the exhibit, they actually pulled the top of the rail off. That's kind of disconcerting too, because I mean, shouldn't these be made of a different material, or you know, I'm not sure what the construction standards are. You know, could that collapse? Could that have collapsed if you get a bunch of people, say that they're taking pictures and you put your back up against the exhibit, you know, the fence on the exhibit? I'm not sure, you know, what that construction was.